Yemi Adeyemi had been at Dunmore University for 6 weeks, long enough to know where the Aldwell Faculty Club was and not long enough to feel he'd belonged inside it. He had come on a Thursday evening because Professor Harlan had told him the reading series was worth attending, and because a junior adjunct instructor at 6 weeks does not say no to the people who write his letters. He was standing near the foyer's coat rack, still wearing his jacket, watching the Thursday foot traffic move through the front door and past the concierge's stand. The concierge's name was Barrett. Yemi had not known that an hour ago. He would not forget it by morning. Nadine Carr came through the door at 7 minutes past 6. Yemi recognized her the way any literature instructor at Dunmore would. She had published 4 books, chaired the department for 8 years, and the Harwick Medal on her curriculum vitae was the kind of credential that made search committees sit up straight. She was wearing a dark wool coat and carrying a canvas tote bag printed with the logo of a literary journal, and she moved with the unhurried ease of a person who has been somewhere many times and expects to be again. She set the bag on her arm, pulled a lanyard card from her coat pocket, and laid it on the concierge's stand the way a person lays down a key they have used 1,000 times before. Barrett looked at it, then he looked at her. "This probably a guest card," he said. He did not pick it up. "Guest access for this evening ends at 6. Dr. Carr's expression did not change. Behind her, 2 colleagues from the chemistry department arrived, showed their cards with barely a pause. Barrett glanced and waved them through, and disappeared into the corridor. She watched this. Then she looked back at Barrett. "It's a member card," she said. Her voice was even. "I've had it 11 years. Member cards have a different color coding." He pushed it back toward her without scanning it. "You may want to check with whoever issued this." Yemi did not move from the coat rack. He was aware, in the vague, uncomfortable way of a person who is not sure what he is seeing, that something was wrong in the exchange. He told himself it was a clerical issue. He was still telling himself that when Dr. Carr set her tote bag on the floor beside her feet, straightened her coat, and asked, in a voice so level it had almost no inflection at all, "What is the verification procedure for a disputed card?" Barrett blinked. "I'd ask you to call the membership office in the morning." "The membership office," she said, "not the scanner on your stand." A pause. "The scanner is for confirmed member cards." "Then scan it," she said, "and confirm it." He did not reach for the scanner. He looked past her toward the door, as if the conversation might simply conclude if he waited long enough. Dr. Carr did not move. She had not raised her voice. She stood where the foyer could see her, hands quiet at her sides, and she waited. Yemi did not realize he had stopped breathing until Professor Harlan came through the door behind him and touched his elbow. Harlan was 62, an emeritus professor of medieval history, and he read the foyer in about 4 seconds. He said nothing to Yemi. He walked to the stand, nodded at Dr. Carr, and turned to Barrett. "Scan her card, please." "Sir, I was just explaining that. Scan the card." There was a quality in Harlan's voice that Yemi had heard once before, in a clip from a Senate hearing, from a man who had said 3 words and ended a 40-minute filibuster. Barrett picked up the card. The scanner beeped green. The small light on the reader went steady. What happened in the next 2 minutes was not loud. It was the opposite of loud. Professor Reyes from the English department came back through the lounge corridor, took in the situation, and stopped beside Dr. Carr without being asked. Then Dr. Osi from comparative literature. Then a woman Yemi did not know but whose faculty badge said archives. They came back out of the lounge 1 and 2 at a time, the way people step into a room where they sense they are needed, and they stood. Not in a line, not in formation. They simply gathered, 7 of them within 3 minutes, and none of them went back inside. The faculty senate president was a short woman named Dr. Albright, who wore her reading glasses on a beaded chain and spoke so quietly in department meetings that people leaned forward to hear her. She looked at Barrett. She said, "What reason did you give for declining to scan the card?" Barrett's certainty, which had been absolute 4 minutes ago, had become something else. There was a question about the color coding. "The scanner read it in under a second," Dr. Albright said. "What was the question?" He had no answer that worked. The foyer was not a courtroom. It did not need to be. The 7 people standing around Dr. Carr were not angry in any theatrical way. They were simply present, and their presence said what language did not need to. Yemi watched Barrett's face. He watched the moment when the man understood that no institutional procedural retreat was available to him, that the people around Dr. Carr were not going away, and that the evening had gone somewhere he had not intended and could not reverse. The club director, a man named Holt, came down the main staircase 4 minutes after that. Someone had called ahead. Yemi would learn later that it was the head archivist from her cell phone, before she had even come back out of the lounge. Holt was a trim man in his 50s who looked in that moment like a person who understood immediately what he was walking into. He shook Dr. Carr's hand first. He thanked the colleagues who had gathered and asked gently if they would like to go in and be seated. They looked at Dr. Carr. She nodded and they went. Then Holt asked Barrett, in a voice that was also very quiet, to step into the back office. He said it the way a person says something they have already decided. Barrett went. Holt walked Dr. Carr to the reading room himself. At the door, he told her that the club would have a written response to her before 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, that a scan-first protocol for all arrivals would be in effect by Monday, and that he was sorry. He said the last part without qualifications, without procedure, without inserting a policy name between himself and the apology. She received it with grace, Res. She said thank you, and she meant it, and she went in to take her seat. Yemi stayed in the foyer a minute longer than he needed to. He was a junior adjunct instructor, 6 weeks into a job he was still learning to trust, and he had watched 11 years of membership be dismissed in under 60 seconds by a man with a card stand and a certainty he had not earned. He had watched 7 people walk back out of a warm room and stand in a cold foyer because they had decided that going inside without her was not a thing they were willing to do. He thought about that on the way home. He was still thinking about it when he read, the next morning, that the Carre Family Foundation, named for Dr. Carre's mother, a school teacher from the South who had spent 30 years in a district where most of the children had nothing, had placed its $340,000 annual lecture series disbursement under review, pending a formal written response from the club's board of directors. The foundation's statement was 4 sentences. It said that the gift was intended to honor a woman who believed that belonging was not a privilege to be rationed, and that the foundation would need to be satisfied that the institution understood the same. The board's response came before noon. Barrett was suspended pending a full review of the incident. The scan-first protocol was formalized in writing and sent to every club employee. The written apology to Dr. Carr was signed by the board chair. The disbursement, Yemi read 3 days later, was released in full after the board's corrective action plan was accepted by the foundation's trustees. He read it twice. He thought about Dr. Carr standing in the foyer with her tote bag at her feet, and her voice at the exact same level it would have been if Barrett had simply scanned the card the first time. He thought about what it cost a person to maintain that composure. He thought about the 7 people who had come back out of the warm room, not because anyone asked them to, but because they looked at what was in front of them and decided. He had looked at what was in front of him, too. He had stood at the coat rack and told himself it was probably a clerical issue. That was the part he did not stop thinking about, not what Barrett had done, though that was clear enough. What he himself had almost let go unmarked, what any of them might have let go, if Harlan had not come through the door, if the archivist had not picked up her phone, if 7 people had not decided that warmth on the other side of a door was not worth walking through at the wrong moment. Dr. Carr was at her desk the following Monday when Yemi knocked. He said he wanted to tell her he was glad she had stayed in the foyer. He was not entirely sure why he said it that way, stayed rather than fought or refused, or demanded, but she looked up from her papers and nodded once, as if he had chosen exactly the right word. Someone has to, she said. Might as well be the person who belongs there. She went back to her work. He went back to his. Outside the window, the campus moved through the ordinary rhythms of a Tuesday in autumn, and the Aldwell Faculty Club's doors opened to every member card that came through, scanned it on arrival, as they should have been all along.